Hey, Soul Tribe. Mel, intuitive coach here. Excited to bring in another Soul Saturday session. So, a couple evenings ago, I was repotting some of my indoor house plants, and I had turned on one of the many podcasts that I have in my watch later file in YouTube, and I wasn't fully tuned in. I was just half listening. I was repotting and kind of in my own world when a woman speaking said something that stopped me in my tracks. And she said, I was privileged enough to go through difficult times in my life. And something about the way she said it hit me deeply. And I knew that it was going to be an important podcast. And so after I got done replanting, I sat down with a pen and paper and I took notes. And I wanted to share with you today some of the insights that have come through because there's wisdom that we all need to lean into when it comes to our struggles, when it comes to our thoughts, our patterns, how we replay events over and over. And the woman speaking was Martha Beck. She is a renowned life coach, a sociologist. She's a best-selling author who spent decades helping people return to their truth in what she calls inner integrity and inner freedom. She's coached everyone from, I believe, Oprah Winfrey and everyday seekers like you and I, blending science, psychology, and spirituality in the most grounded way. So I want to share with you today some insights and notes that I took from it, and also from my own coachings of how to interrupt patterns, to shift our thoughts, to step into deeper purpose. Because oftentimes one of the biggest questions that clients ask me is, what is my purpose, Mel? And so today I want to lean into what purpose truly is. And is it a place that we discover? Is it a place that we find? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So grab a pen and paper, cozy on in, and I will also put cliff notes in the description box regarding Martha Beck and her work and that podcast as well. So feel free to check that out. And if you guys like the message here, please hit that thumbs up button. Feel free to share with someone who could benefit from these messages today. Now, many of us feel stuck, right? I've been stuck before. I will be stuck again, where we tend to spin the same patterns, right? The same doubts, the same fears. They loop over and over in our minds, but they're not our truth, right? What if they're just default programs that sometimes we subconsciously we're not aware of, so we don't even question them. The good news is I'm going to teach you today how to rewire, how to reprogram, because you have the ability to interrupt those default patterns and to become conscious of new ones, right? How to rewrite the story. Now, as life coach Martha Beck says, the left hemisphere of the brain is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master, right? The left side of our brain. So today I want to help you shift into that creative right hemisphere, the generative part of your brain, so that you can begin to see your purpose more clearly, Soul Tribe, and act from the energy of creation, which is that right side, instead of fear, which lives in that left side. And first, we need to recognize the patterns. So we're going to map the loop. Soul Tribe, I want you to think of a pattern that you find yourself stuck in. Now, this is a thought pattern. Maybe it's, I'm not good enough. That's a big one. I've even said that to myself at times. I'm not good enough to do this because of imposter syndrome or because of comparison or just feeling like, we will mess it up. Perhaps your pattern is, I'll never find love, or I'm broke, I'm an imposter, I'm jealous, I'm ugly, I'm a loser, right? Whatever the stories are that have replayed out in your mind, or perhaps you're currently playing them out. Imagine going into a nursery, and this is something Beck said on her podcast. Imagine going into a nursery and picking up a baby and saying to that baby, you're not good enough, right? We are all babies. We are having this this human experience, but our souls are here to grow, to evolve, and to learn. And it's through the mind that we tend to judge ourselves. The mind is the biggest block. I want you to ask yourself, when in your life does that loop show up? What cues, whether these are internal or whether they are external, trigger the loop? Because often these loops run unconscious until they're interrupted. So I really want you to sit with that for a moment. And if you're brave enough, drop it in the comment section below. What is the loop that you are playing out? Next, we'll take a look at the anatomy of a thought trap. According to Martha Beck, many of our fears arise from the left brain storytelling, right? The part of the brain that latches onto narratives. Like, what if I fail? What could go wrong? And it filters out contradictory evidence. She calls this effect the hall of mirrors. The story loops reflect back on themselves and they trap you. So again, the left brain is a useful servant. I love quotes. So I'm going to put out a lot of them today because I think one of my love languages is definitely words, right? Words of affirmation, but also I am an air sign, Libra sun, Aquarius moon. So I love thoughts, intellect, the power of the mind. So if you are interested in this as well, you're going to love this episode today. So again, the left brain is useful as a servant, but terrible as a master. So if your mind is dominated by those narrative loops, you'll be stuck. We must shift into the right hemisphere, which is creativity, connection, and curiosity. We have to make that conscious shift, and I'll share with you how in order to break free. Now, also, something she says, anxiety shuts down creativity. So when you're in fear, your system resists openness. But when you shift towards curiosity and creativity, you rewire the brain in a different mode. It's important that kindness precedes creativity, okay? Because without kindness toward your inner parts, those loops of yours, creativity alone is not going to break this cycle. We have to be kind. Think of the nursery analogy, right? You're not going to go into the nursery and pick up a baby and start telling that baby it's not good enough, telling that baby that it's ugly, right? So this is about you talking to yourself with compassion and kindness. Imagine that you are about to pitch an idea. Immediately that voice says, this is foolish. What if they judge you? Then you pull back. Then you start to criticize. You start to second guess. And then that is the loop. And to interrupt that, we need a doorway out. All right? We need a doorway out into that right hemisphere. So here we'll look at interrupting and shifting. Now we move from theory, right, into practice. Here are tools and techniques that you can immediately, in the moment, right here, right now, use to break a loop, to shift your mind, and to reorient towards purpose. Kindness first, right? Meet the inner critic with compassion. You can't force yourself to calm down when you're in a stressful situation, but you can be kind. Treat your inner anxious voice like a frightened animal, right? Speak softly to it. You're not going to go up to a frightened animal and start screaming and yelling, right? Go up to it with compassion and kindness. Lean into trust because that creates safety. Experiment with this loop. When it arises, I want you to pause. I want you to breathe and say to yourself, I'm sorry that you feel that way, right? I'm here with you. I see your fear. Compassion is so big, and we don't realize how much we criticize ourselves, how we critique what we do, how perfectionism or imposter syndrome or the conditionings around abandonment or rejection show up in our minds, how that creates the stories that loop into these patterns that keep us stuck. This act of kindness doesn't mean that you agree with the narrative. It's just creating a safe field around the emotional part of it long enough to step outside of it. And then I want you to ask a creative shift question, right? Because we're shifting into that right hemisphere here. Instead of what is wrong or how do I fix this, because that's left hemisphere oriented, I want you to drop into the right hemisphere by asking how can I create right now, or what can I create? Because creativity is the lever, Soul Tribe, that is going to shift you out of fear. Because when you shift from problem solving, right? When you shift out of that, like, how can I fix this? How can I solve it? Because it's that analytical part of the mind. It's the one that counts numbers. It's the one that focuses on timing when we're trying to figure everything out. When we drop into, instead of solving, into creating, it begins to rewire the brain. It doesn't need to be a masterpiece, right? It could be a drawing. It could be a squiggle. You could write a sentence. You can compose a letter, set up an altar, clean your house, repot your plants, cook or rearrange something. Anything that can help you shift your energy. So example, let's say someone is stuck in their career and they might ask, instead of doubt, you might ask yourself, what can I draw? What can I write or try that gives me a signal of possibility? Because that small act is going to interrupt the loop. So physical movements, even if they are baby steps, shifts the nervous system. It's important to participate in activity after kindness, not as a punishment, but as a way to engage the right brain and body. Because sometimes the loops, they sit in your body as well. So you can stretch, you can shake your limbs, walk around the room, step outside, take some intentional breaths, stretch your arms over your head, stand up, do some jumping jacks, whatever it is that can get you into your body. Because again, that loop lives partly in your body. So shake it, move it, change the physical state to give yourself a new container. And next, we're going to reframe and activate the opposite, right? The opposite, because this is duality here, the left and the right. And we want to shift again into more of that right side. So write down the flavor words that you use, Soul Tribe, to describe your anxiety loop. Maybe it's powerless. Maybe it's uncertainty. Perhaps it's ashamed. Then list the opposites. Right? The opposite of powerless, empowered. The opposite of uncertainty, you're sure, right? You're sure of something. The opposite of proud, the opposite of ashamed is proud. So Beck calls this recognizing your anxiety opposites. And this is important here because when the loop hits, I want you to switch to an opposite phrase. For instance, if the thought is, I'll embarrass myself, counter it with, I can be courageous and learn. You might even say, what if this fails, right? Maybe that's a loop. What if this fails? But what if you're going to grow anyway? So say the opposite of what that fear mind is telling you, that loop is telling you. And then I'd like you to anchor into something bigger, right? Maybe your purpose, your vision, your future self. So when the loops are strong, jump into maybe a higher reference point. Ask, who am I becoming? What is my future self? See. Visualize the ideal life, not through fantasy, but in grounded energies, like in what you feel deeply within yourself. Beck often coins the term, I think, time travel or future visioning. She has people imagine 5 years out, 10 years out, and really dropping into the senses, which is something that I've often shared here on the channel, is imagining your future life by not what your left mind is concocting, but how you want to feel. It's that creative piece through manifestation. So how do you imagine your ideal day? Start with 10 years from now. Maybe you are 44 years old. Maybe you'll be 54 in 10 years. Where are you living? What does your room look like when you wake up in the morning? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you see? And really walk yourself through your ideal life and use that vision as a magnetic north to pull you out of an immediate loop. Now that you have the tools to interrupt and shift consciousness, awareness, how do you step into purpose? How do you know what your purpose is? Not as a mega mission, but a living expression, like how you can access it now. For one, purpose is lived, right? It's not discovered. It's not something external, which often confuses a lot of people. Like, what is my purpose? It doesn't mean that living your purpose isn't aligned with certain things that you are participating in your external world, because it's not waiting for you like a prize. Purpose is how you live each moment in your integrity by aligning your outer truth with your inner truth, or vice versa. Purpose often shows itself in small acts. What you make, how you help, the threads that you tend to. Notice reoccurring sparks or curiosity. So what ideas, Soul Tribe, what topics or what activities always draw you in? What themes keep showing up in your life? Maybe this is through the books that you read. Maybe it's the conversations that you love. It could be the classes that you take, the images that you post on your vision board. I love creating vision boards, and there's a reoccurring theme, and I've been creating vision boards for the last 2 decades. And the theme that always shows up amongst all of my boards is travel, community, learning, fitness, and health. These are areas that help me lean into my purpose, and I actively stand in my integrity by honoring the things that I love. Now, Soul Tribe, these reoccurring patterns are clues to your purpose. So let me know below, what is it that you are leaning into? Because your past is going to give you insight. Like I said, what you've already been leaning into is part of your purpose. So example, let's say someone notices that they always gravitate towards stories around justice. Their purpose might not be to be a lawyer, but perhaps advocacy, perhaps teaching or making media about justice. Take baby steps in that direction. Test the waters with small projects. Experiment with this energy. If your spark is teaching, host a mini session. Create a live reel, a workshop, or even write a blog. These small experiments function as feedback loops. They show you what lights you up, what resists, like where resistance comes in, and where you are aligned. And next, I want you to commit to integrity over comfort. Purpose demands risk, and sometimes risk of saying no to what doesn't resonate, risk of exposing your voice. Oftentimes, when we feel stuck is when the greatest transformational shift of our lives is about to happen. Think of when you felt stuck in the past. Perhaps you felt stuck in your career. Perhaps you felt stuck in a relationship. Can you imagine if you stayed in that dynamic? And I want you to think of something you've already gone through. If you had stayed in it, it would have been a disaster, right? But at that moment, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. I'm so stuck. So that's why when we are feeling this loop, it actually is a privilege, right? It is a privilege to struggle and go through these experiences because it gives us insight into where change is needed, where we need to get honest with ourselves. So a quote from Beck that really sat with me, again, I love quotes, is when you betray yourself to keep the peace, you start a war within yourself. So I'm going to repeat that. When you betray yourself to keep the peace, you start a war within yourself. That's a reminder to choose integrity over comfort, to fully uncover your purpose. Purpose is served when you choose small integrity steps daily, aligning with small inner truths, even if imperfect. So this topic really reminds me of the Seven of Swords in tarot, because often that Seven of Swords, well, is the mind. It can be the ego trap. It can be the loop. It can be the stories. It can be the lies that we tell ourselves. But what does that do? It creates war. Oftentimes that Seven of Swords, it hurts because we betray ourselves or we feel betrayed by others. So keep the interrupt the loop tools handy if you can. Even on your purpose path, we are all living our purpose. Sometimes we feel like we're off our path, or we feel like we're not living the life we're meant to live. Each and every moment of our lives, we're living on purpose, right? We're living within our purpose, meaning that the struggles, the challenges, the parts of our lives where we felt have detoured, it was all meant to be part of your growth, part of your experiences. So even on this path, you're going to get stuck again. I'm going to get stuck again. You're going to get stuck again. So use kindness, right? Use kindness, use the creative shift, use movement, and anchor to your vision, because you already have these tools. And if you didn't, you have them now. Over time, your brain becomes wired to default to creativity, not anxiety. This is how we rewire the loop. Animals, they are right hemisphered, right? They are not worried about the timing of things or what could go wrong. They are constantly in that manifestation energy. So now that you have a toolkit, right? Remember, 1, kindness, 2, creative shifts, 3, movement, 4, anchor to your vision. Use them whenever the mind loop arises. Over time, those interruptions weaken the old wiring, and you begin to live from more spacious, generative parts of yourself. Purpose is not a distant mountaintop. It's showing up moment by moment in integrity, curiosity, and creativity. Remember, anxiety shuts down creativity, but creativity shuts down anxiety. That is your secret sauce, right? That's your secret key. Now it's your time, Soul Tribe. Interrupt, shift, create, step into the next version of yourself, right? Uncover your purpose. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope this was helpful. I know that Martha Beck is one of my new favorite life coaches. I really love her work. She carries such a vibrant energy about her. And these are teachings that I have already incorporated in my own life, but I love the way that she spins some of these ideas and how she has you looking at the scientific piece and the spiritual piece as well. So feel free to check her out. She is incredible. Thank you again so much for tuning in today. I hope you could take something away from this session. Lots of love to you.